How are you? So she contacted all those folks, plus a few more from past years. She reached and had live conversations with over 40 people. Maybe some of you are some of those people. So we really have made a concerted effort to reach out to the community to talk about something that's near and dear to us here as an airport, and that's how we impact the community and how we interact with the community. And so we wanted to spend a little bit of time here tonight walking through the different aspects of how an airport operates, what we track in the way of what's on the ground and what's in the air, where the neighborhoods are, the flight paths around this area, mechanisms that we have to operate under from the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, as far as our airspace, our Class Delta airspace here, how traffic moves around our airspace. The different kind of weather conditions are predominantly in this area that drive some activities around which way you land and which way you take off, or which cross our two runways that we have here, our long one and our short one. And then we're also going to talk a little bit beyond just the numbers and metrics. We're going to walk into some details here. And if are you changing slides on the agenda? Thanks. Maybe just flash that up there. And then we're going to walk into some detail on exactly if you have a concern about overflight, about noise, about impact from aircraft or the airport here. There's a way you can report that information. So we wanted to walk through that here tonight and make sure everybody has the same ground truth of understanding of the different mechanisms and systems that we have in place here to get your feedback so that we can do something with it and we get beyond just tracking. So we're aware of hot spots in the community where things happen over and over again, and look and see how we can help influence and reduce those hot spots if we can in the way of traffic and everything. So with that, let me stop and I'll introduce folks one at a time, and I'll introduce the person next. I do want to point out that we do have 3 board members of the airport district board here. We have Greg Warfath, David Diamond, and Mary Hetherington. Yep, right in front of me. Thank you. We have posted this meeting as there would be a possible quorum of our 5 directors here. There is a quorum. And because we have a quorum, we haven't posted this official board meeting under the Brown Act in California. So the conversations are going to be directed at the audience here and with the staff. The board members themselves won't be able to participate in the conversations because that would trigger an actual board meeting that we have not disclosed to the public is going to happen tonight.
Good for you for learning the Brown Act.
They were going to be here live listening here. Okay. And we do have, and we are broadcasting this, as you might have heard from the voice here tonight, that we do have about 14, 20 people online now that are participating via Zoom. And we will, as we go through the process of the presentations, we'll pause at the end for questions from the audience, further clarifications, and we'll certainly be taking questions from the audience online as well. And we're broadcasting the same information you see in front here online to the Zoom audience in the community. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to our Director of Aviation, Jeff Manesco, to talk through the first portion of this.
Hello, everyone. Jeff Manesco, the Director of Aviation. Noise inquiries, etc., comes through Director of Aviation, also do property management, marketing, liaison with FAA, and pilots community outreach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to some statistics to give you an idea of how the Truckee Tahoe Airport has changed some over time. There have been a couple inflection points where it's changed, and just quite honestly, for a number of years, it's been pretty static. There's some changes on the margins, but it's been in a couple single digits of percentages. This first slide goes back to the year 2006. And to orient you, on the left is total number of operations. That's takeoff and landings. It goes from 0 up to 40,000. On the far right side, 0, 100, 600 to the top. And it is indexed to both number of households that have called in to make some form of complaint. That scale is also indexed to the Standard & Poor's 500 SPY fund, so the S&P 500. When you look at aviation, there's a direct correlation between aviation, particularly business aviation, and the health of the economy. So I put the S&P 500 here, and you'll see over time that our aviation very closely kind of tracks what's happening with the wider economy. The large green line, the top right here, this one here, the total number of operations. So 2006, we had 23,000 operations. There's a dip during the housing recession. We actually had some indeed hangars here at the time. Fairly static through the 10 to 14. 14, you see a jump, stays fairly static. 19, up. During COVID, it actually went down a little bit, total operations. You can see where we are here. So from 2019 to through the end of 2024, pretty standard, it's down a little bit. Across the bottom, I want to call out a couple items as well. Lahontan construction began in 1996, 509 units. Median price, 2024, 4.8 million. Martis Camp, 650 units. Began first house construction 2006. Median price 2024, 11.5 million. 2008 Schaefer's Mill, 400 units. Again, 2008 is when first construction. Median price last year 3.5 million. These construction projects, everyone here is local. They're kind of across the street. Construction began, housing downturn. A lot of those second homes became occupied as second homeowners in the 10, 14, 15 time frame. That's also the same time frame that are turboprop. So that's like your C12s that have twin engines, or your Pilatus, which is a turbine engine on it. Think Surf Air for wheels up. There's some jet operators as well. But in this time frame, is we got about 15, I'll say broadly speaking, talking in broad terms, about 1,500 units, high net worth households, primarily second homes. Martis Camp, I think today has about 610 units built. There's about 40 lots to still build. The 610 units, 20-ish full-time residents. And so if you look at the gray line, which is your jet traffic, the orange line, which is your turboprop, very static through the early 2000s. Around 2013-14, a lot of these units began being built with people occupying them, primarily second homes. So when you see some of the jet and turbo traffic increase. And then in the next slide, I'm going to show you a little bit more in depth. The jet turbo traffic remained pretty constant. Turboprop goes up a little, from 2020, from COVID, jet turbo are almost flatlined across that window of time. The S&P 500 is the dotted green line. I threw that up there just to show. This is depicting $100 invested in 2006 The S&P 500 today would be, I think yesterday it was like 605, 600. So I think it's important to kind of see that over time to see how the nature of the airport has changed just by raw numbers and statistics. Couple other pieces, air traffic control tower goes in 17 part-time, full-time, seasonal 17 for the summer, full-time in 2018. 2019, we added a couple of unit rows for November, in row, and Papa and Key row. Those were constructed 10 units. And then 23 would depict the big mega winter that we all experienced. We still have PTSD. The last piece I'll talk to is the bars on this, and this is the number of households, not how many times a household called in, but the number of households that called in a given year. So if you go back, we have good data tracking from 2010. So again, scaled to the right, so around 50, 40, 25, 50, 50, 100, 170, so yeah, this is like 170, 140. Well, I'll average slide this to show you by number. See a spike here in 20 and 21, where we go over, I think that this one was at 225 as households called. Now I'm going to use some hypothesis. I can't prove it. A lot of second homeowners, a lot of people, even locals lived here a long time, are at home working in that window of time. I think it changed the nature of the dynamic. So we get a huge spike of people that are sensing the traffic. Again, hypothesis, I can't prove it, but it kind of coincided with COVID when a lot of people are at home. Since 21, which was our high water mark, down in 22, down in 23, and down in 24. So this is kind of the state of nature of your Truckee Tahoe Airport since 2006. The next slide. Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing hearing. Do I want me to hold that home?
No.
Portable? Let's go to the alley. Oh boy, I don't know the laser pointers, but I don't know if I'll try. That was the slide that I wanted to talk to the most. Okay. So most of the information here was depicted in the last slide, but just in more detail. So in the upper left, these slides will be available, so you can look at them. I fully realize that almost no one can see these. I can barely see them with my glasses on right now. And the upper left graphic just shows the total number of operations broken out by total, jet, turbo, piston, and glider. I already talked to it in the last slide where I think it was probably easier to see. What you will notice again is kind of the jet and turbo traffic really is pretty static since about 2020. And they really picked up in the 13 to 15. Again, my hypothesis, unprovable, is an additional 1,500 units of high net worth second homes over there that probably drove some of the turbo and some of the jet traffic here. The upper right quadrant is the total number of comments that we receive by aircraft type. So orange is jet. Again, this starts in 2010. All the way to 2024. Green is piston, blue is turboprop. I'm sorry, the bright green is the total, the dark green is the piston. You can see again how comments went up, really coincided with the year or two after COVID, and that they have come down. The discrepancy you'll see from number of households that register complaints versus total number of comments is not everyone just calls in once. Some households will call as many as 75 times a day with a high water mark, or maybe 110 times in a month. Most households don't. Most households on average call like 1.2 times every 60 days. So there's a smaller number of households that if we were doing pure statistics, we would do some analysis, we would find the outliers, and we would remove those. We don't, we count everything. But I want you to know that there are some households out there that are really outside multiple standard deviations, that if we were a company where we're doing scientific analysis, those, 4 and 5 standard deviations would be removed. We do not remove those. So that's why you see a discrepancy between number of households and number of comments. What we find most compelling is the number of households. And we get a new household that's never called before, and it doesn't happen very often. We treat that as, well, we got a new household, and it's a great opportunity for Kay. This is a big piece of her job jar to reach out to them and to find out what's going on, because we feel that we have an opportunity to have a great conversation and to hopefully create some understanding. It's a great segue. Bottom right is total number of households by year. Again, 2010, 47, high water mark, 2021, 241. Last year was 77. So number of households by year. The last chart, bottom left, is looking at runway utilization. And the runway that I think the community cares most about is usage of runway 29. So if you're taking off on 29, you're going over Mars Valley States, Olympic Heights towards Truckee. And if you're taking off runway 02, which is our short runway 29, runways have 2 numbers. Perhaps most of you know this. It's based on magnetic direction. So it's one, this is the runway, north is up. This would be runway 36 going north. If I'm landing this way, be runway 18, so I'm landing south. So every runway has 2 sets of numbers. Runway 02 is our quietest runway. So if you take off on runway 02, it's 4,500 feet. So the piston aircraft, some of the turboprops can use it, but for takeoffs, rarely will a jet use it. Most insurance companies will not allow jet aircraft, and a lot of the operators, their company manuals won't allow them to operate on anything less than 5,000. So our jet traffic, for a whole bunch of reasons, because they need a longer runway, is typically 1129. So the quiet runway 02, we get very few noise complaints. Takes off towards Glenshire or towards Tyker, generates almost no noise complaints at all. But you can't use it all the time. And following me, Larry, our tower manager of our air traffic control tower, is going to talk about runway selection and how that's done. So back to runway utilization of the 02 and 29. So 02 is the quiet runway. This is 2016, 2024, 2017. Partial tower, part-time seasonal tower, 18. We have a tower full-time. You see the total number of operations in orange off runway 29 went down a little bit when the tower was here, and it's gone down a little bit over the past years. We've made a concerted effort. We'll show you some of the things that we're doing to really encourage pilots. Number one, if it's safe, to use 02 when they can. You can see runway 02 utilization in the blue has gone up. So when able, when it's safe, please depart runway 02 and decrease 29. And we only did that for piston because a lot of the jet and turbine aircraft can't use that. Next slide. Okay, this time I hand it over to Larry Finney, who's the manager of our air traffic control tower. And just so you know, the air traffic control tower, we do not qualify for the Federal Aviation Administration FAA funding for a control tower. So we contract the control tower through Midwest ATC. There's really 3 large companies in the US that do air traffic control services. And so Larry is contracted by the Truckee Tahoe Airport District, not Larry himself, via the company, and he will talk to you about that.
Thanks, Jeff.
If you want the laser.
So like Jeff said, my name is Larry Finney. I'm the air traffic manager here at the Truckee Airport Control Tower. We are a non-federal control tower. We operate under the same rules as an FAA control tower, like the one over in Reno, or for the pilots or the people that understand aviation. Over in Sacramento, there's a federal contract tower. The the non-federal, we all follow the same rules. It doesn't matter just because we're a non-federal control tower that we don't follow the same rules as the FAA. So one of those that we'll talk about is runway selection procedures. A little bit about noise. I'll follow up on Jeff's common runway usage and the efforts that we make up in the tower. And then also non-aviation people, I encourage you to come by and see what we do up in the tower. I haven't been to ACT meetings, probably half a dozen of them, and I talk about tower tours. If you're not a pilot and you want to see what we do, please get a hold of myself, hey, Jeff, Rob, Vince, anybody at the airport, and you can come by for a tour and see what we do up there. I think it might help a little bit for the community and to see what we do. Next slide. So runway selection procedures for us and for almost every airport is going to be based on the weather. In this slide here, what we do throughout the day, we are all certified tower weather observers at our control tower here. We did that in 2022. We took over all the weather observations from the airport. So we come in the morning and periodically throughout the day, once an hour, we take a weather observation, and based on the current weather and current winds, both surface and aloft. And if you look over here in the upper right corner, it's hard to see, but that's from February 7th, last Friday, when we had a snowstorm. And the same thing with the weather observation below it. So I'm going to use that when I talk about the next slide and how we have to consider more than just the weather aloft, the weather on the ground, and then the forecasted weather that we look at for runway selection. You'll see, and I'll pick right now, it says talking Jeff from Nosco, but right underneath of there is Palisades Tahoe, the 8,700 foot peak at the highest point of Squaw Valley. We use that as a ridge wind aloft, and then we compare it to, if you look at the METAR right here, this is the 1249 local weather. The winds are out of the west. And if that wasn't up there, it would show you the winds are out of the south at about 50 gusts to 60 miles an hour. So somewhere there's a wind shear. And for the pilot community, what we try to do is provide a stable approach, the most stable approach to the runway. So we look at winds aloft, winds on the ground, forecast, which is what this is right here. That box right there just tells you the forecast. That is made by an observer over at the National Weather Service in Marina. So we take this information, next slide, please. And then what we look at is, do we have the weather to advertise a visual approach? A visual approach is what an instrument-rated pilot is going to fly to the airport visually clear of clouds. That's the type of approach we have to advertise. Now, if you're a visual flight rules pilot, I'll pick on Mike Daniel in the back flying his Carbon Cub back there with the cat on the side. He's a VFR pilot. He can fly wherever he wants to, however he wants to go, without reference to any of these top 3 procedures up here. These are procedures that, and they're hard to see, I apologize. But this first one, what we do is we have to look, can we do a visual approach or an instrument approach? The weather for last Friday, the ceiling was 3,600 broken. That's below the limits. Oakland Center, the controlling agency that from the FAA runs the airspace and the approaches into here. They can't initiate a visual approach because we don't have the weather requirements. So the tower has to pick an instrument approach for them to fly to get safely to the airport. So this approach right here is what we call the RNAV visual approach, or RNAV approach to runway 11. The reason I put this one up is because all of the instrument departure procedures, which is the next thing we look at, we have 2 instrument departure procedures off of the airport. They only go off of runway 29 and 2. Jeff mentioned that jets predominantly can't take runway 2, and so they take 29. The other departure is the Mogul 2 departure, this procedure here, and it also goes off at 29 or 2. The problem with that, having this as the advertised approach to land on 11 and depart 29, is that creates now this little graphic down here and what the FAA calls opposite direction operations. If there's an opposite direction operation, it's inherently an unsafe situation to put pilots into. So what we have to do is consider the approach that we're using, whether it's a visual or an instrument approach, with, sorry, trying out here, with the departure procedure. So, and then we also have to not have an opposite direction operation. The cutoff point for the center is about 20 miles from the airport. So if there's somebody inbound on the RNAV to 11, So nobody can depart runway 29 until airplane is on the ground. So now you get airplanes holding longer on the ground. And then. Excuse me. In 2008, there was an accident at Continental or at Denver International Airport. Continental 737 landed on a crosswind runway, slid off the runway, damaged the airplane, had a few injuries. The NTSB asked the FAA to reconsider or to look at their runway selection process. So that's this area down here. And one of the things that they found out, 2008, took the FAA 15 years finally to get this situated, but they added paragraph C down here. So a tower controller has to look at all of this stuff right here. Winds, assign the runway that's most nearly aligned with winds when it's 5 knots or more. If it's less than 5 knots, then it's a common runway, which I'll bring that up to in a second. We have, if another runway is more operationally advantageous, we can assign that runway. But C, the tailwind and crosswind components for a pilot, if they exceed the capabilities, that outweighs any noise abatement procedures that are in place. And that one came out in 2022, 2023. And then you'll see on the next slide, but it's item D. If a pilot prefers another runway, if we assign runway 2 and the pilot says no, I want to level 29, the pilot's responsible for the safe operation of the aircraft, not the control tower. So we assign that runway 2 based on that. Next slide.
Excuse me, can we ask questions while you're talking or should we wait?
I would say if it's a question for clarification for a term you don't understand, please ask. If it's a question about anything else, let's wait till the end, otherwise we probably won't finish tonight. So if it's a clarification, please
I
ask.
just wanted you to clarify the last sentence that you just said about a pilot making that request. What would be a situation? It sounds like you're saying their request for that runway overrules you being in the tower? Or why would they ask you that?
So we advertise, like today, we're advertising landing runway 29, departing runway 29 and 2. I work today, so I know that. And so and the winds were calm for the most part of the day, and they kicked up out of the west to about 5 knots. So pilot has that information. Once an hour, we make what we call an ATIS, which is a broadcast that goes out over the radio for the pilots to get the current weather. The runways in use, any notes to airmen that are out there, anything that will impact their operation in the local area. And so if a pilot calls me up and says, we're ready to taxi with ATIS information to Echo, I will taxi him to runway 2, because that's the common runway. If that aircraft, if it's a jet, if he's an instrument, he's going to go to 29 because of a longer runway. The jets usually work with them. But if it's a piston aircraft that Jeff was talking about, I take them to 2, I taxi them to 2, and they say, unable to request 29. I'm not going to question the pilot's decision to go to that runway. There's other factors. I mean, we're in the winter right now, it's cold temperatures, but in the summertime, it's density altitude. We sit at 5,900 feet, roughly is the field elevation. But if you throw in 85-degree temperature, now the airplane thinks it's at 9,500 feet. And so the airplane, performance-wise, needs that longer runway to depart safely and get there. They can't depart off of 4,500. If that makes sense, did that answer it? Kind of. Yeah. Okay. So we're done with the 6 steps, but I do want to say that we do look at the Comwind runway. We have developed, I've been the air traffic manager since 2020, almost 5 years now. I've been here for I got hired on in December of 17 as a controller. So I've seen a lot of different things happen at this airport. And one of the things that I started when I became the air traffic manager, the next slide, but Comwind runway uses, I really press that a lot with the tower controllers. And the airport has also made a big effort in the routes on the trucks and pilot outreach and that kind of stuff. But ultimately, for runway selection, it's the pilot's responsibility to operate their aircraft safely. So, next slide, I think. Yeah, so,
this?
Keep going.
so one of the things we look at for noise abatement, and if you come to the tower, you will see the three overlays that the two overlays that the airport has. We have two of them up in the tower cab that identifies all the noise sensitive areas in the community, so we're familiar with that. In 2017, when they opened up in the summertime, they sat down with the then staff, the general manager, the director of aviation, and they developed some of these routings off of here. They might have even been developed prior to the tower being put in 2017. So we're familiar with this. We operate under a safety first principle. We don't, if there's two airplanes that are gonna end up at the same point at the same time, we're gonna do something else that might put an airplane not where you normally would see it. One of the areas that is a pretty, what we call a hotspot, is the truck scales. When we do that runway 2 departure, we're also coming inbound over the scales to come over the top of the airport. You might see an airplane either side of the scales and not directly over it. The same thing with the bypass departure, which is that slight right turn to follow the bypass bridge out. If we have a faster airplane behind that aircraft that's taking off, say it's a piston and a jet or a turboprop, we might put that piston straight out to the interstate and let the jet fly the bypass departure, just to keep them separated that way. Get airplanes moving faster, we can be more efficient with our airspace, but at the same time, understanding the impacts to the community. Our jet VFR departures that are departing not on an instrument flight plan, they go runway heading to the Truckee River and then they go on course. That's to alleviate some of the overflight up in Tahoe Airport from the jets before they went out to the interstate. Weather impacts, day like today, not too bad, no weather impacts. As the storm moves in, you might start to see some lower scattered clouds that might sit right at the end of the bypass bridge at Interstate 80. So pilots might not be able to fly out there. So we're going to not give a noise abatement departure procedure because it's the safest thing to do. Same thing, scales, we might not bring them in over the scales if there's clouds over there. We're going to come up with something. So this I started in 2020 when I became the air traffic manager, monthly refresher items. I take the director or the director of aviation and community services report that he presents to the board of directors monthly. I take that and I brief it to the controllers. I also look at any of the hotspots that were identified on that report. And like this month, I think we did the bypass departure. Next month, I'll probably go back and do the North Star 7,500 feet or above for jets. It's just a requirement that we use. So we are, as the tower controllers, we are quite aware of the implications of not following the noise and what it does to the community. So,
when you say last month you did the bypass departure, what is that?
so the bypass, I'm sorry. The bypass departure, if it's this procedure right here. So what a pilot will do is they'll depart runway 29 and they'll fly over the runway till they just get past the end of the runway, and then they'll start a right turn to follow the bypass bridge. And we tell them to follow that bridge. If they're unfamiliar with it, I'm going to tell them just like I told you. And that's all they're doing. If they're familiar, I'll just say fly the bypass departure to the interstate and proceed.
So when you say you did that last month, you just retrained people on that last month?
Yeah, I train the controllers monthly, refresher training to remind them what we should.
I have a question as well. The voluntary curfew is at 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Is that a?
I'll talk that, and just, yeah, I just wanna, again, if it's a clarification, please ask, but if we start asking, we won't finish, trust me.
So yeah, and I might say that my apologies if I start talking like an air traffic controller to a pilot, but like we have the scales departure. So when I choreograph for takeoff on runway 2, I'll say after departure flight, scales departure runway 2 cleared for takeoff. If they go, what's that? Then I'll say just past the departure on the runway to get the sewer treatment plant, start a left turn and go to the scales. And then that way, what it does is it misses the homes out over here at Greenwood, and it gets directly over the truck scales as opposed to cutting the corner. We can't fly the airplane. When I first got here, we used headings, and I told the Hardy Bullock, you probably have, sorry. I told him, I said, a lot of good at 300 heading does if the winds are out of the west at 25 knots, because now that ground track's at 320 or 330 heading and it's hitting the Olympic heights every single time. So we came up with geographically putting them over the bypass. And pilots still turn early, they turn late, they don't turn whatever. I will get an email from Kay or TVQ, Dave VanQuest, and I'll look into it from an air traffic standpoint. And if it's a controller issue, I will talk to the controller about the correct way to handle it. It's supposed to what we did. If there's a safety issue, again, the controllers are up there for safety. That's our first priority. Next slide. I think I'm over this. Sorry. Tower tours. Like I said, please come and visit the tower and see what we do. Back there is some business cards. There's also a tower survey. It's typically used for getting feedback on how the tower operates and the service we provide. I talked to Midwest ATC today. I talked with Jeff. We'd like your feedback. It will go to Midwest ATC. They will then forward it to me, and then I can give that information, or they will forward it directly to Jeff. And then we can, it will be another method of getting feedback from the community about how we're doing. Just know, again, safety is our number one priority. And then last slide. Oh,
That's it.
I don't know who's next.
And you asked a question about the hours, so I'll talk to that. So we don't have a curfew.
The hours of the tower.
So it's a great question. The tower hours follow daylight. So right now we're closing the tower 1800 at 6 p.m. in the winter. The summer it follows daylight savings time, etc. And I think eventually it goes to 8 p.m.
Yeah, March 15th, we'll go to 7. We always open at 7 in the morning. And then March 15th, we go to 7:30.
It's pretty much daylight. Just follows the sun.
7:30, 8 o'clock May 1st until Labor Day weekend, and then we go back to 7, and then October 1st, we go back to 6.
Something else too, our tower controllers, I'm a retired Air Force pilot. I don't say this because they work here. We have some of the best controllers I've ever heard on radios. Most of them are retired FAA controllers. FAA is a mandatory retirement at 56. So you can't control aircraft. Ironically, you can fly in your 60s if you're an airline pilot for United Southwest. So most of our controllers are retired FAA controllers. They can work as a contract controller. And we also have a lot of former military controllers. Larry served in the Air Force, also flew as a flight engineer, is also an instrument pilot. Tons of experience in our control tower. Most of them also worked for Oakland Center, which is the airspace above us, as well as Northern California Approach, aka NorCal, which controls lower airspace, not on our Truckee Bowl. So very experienced control tower. Just a couple things to highlight that piggyback what Larry talked about. I'm going to talk to the out. So in your upper left, the shoulder hour protocol. It's not a curfew. We request pilots to not fly from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then between 10 and 11 and 6 and 7. If they are going to fly, we ask them to use the shoulder hour protocol. So there's the long runway 1129. There's Truckee 0220. Stay out of the yellow. You depart 111 over Brockway. Not a lot of aircraft have the performance to do that. But some do. And or to fly over Interstate 80. We have, since we implemented this, we have not had a single noise complaint from an aircraft that flies, quote, the shoulder hour protocol. To the question of, we used to provide a monetary incentive, it was $30 a month, it wasn't a lot, to pilots that, quote, honored the curfew. We cannot do that for the FAA, so we discontinued that. I will state though, since that happened, nothing has changed. Most pilots, myself included, do not fly here at nighttime. Some do. You do not want to fly into a bowl of mountains with the field elevation of 5901, with the winds, the weather, when the tower's not up, wildlife, etc. It's just something you don't want to do. We have very few operations at nighttime. Our local pilots, very rarely do they fly at nighttime in the middle of the night. If we have an operation, it's almost guaranteed it's care flight or during fire season, it's the fire, everyone heard the Chinooks, the Blackhawks, the Bear Fires. If we have an operation at midnight, 1 in the morning, it rarely happens. It's some type of small air taxi carrier typically, or it might be an owner operator. It's almost never anyone that actually lives here. Cause you just don't wanna fly.
Which is concerning, no?
Maybe, depending, it depends on, you know, the pilot and the aircraft. Regardless, it's nothing we can do. It's kind of like a car driving on Interstate 80. You don't get to decide. So clarification, or is it a?
It's a question.
Can you hold it to the end? Yeah, otherwise we won't get through this and we're already late. Those that showed our protocols, our fuel trucks, you know, fly safe, fly quiet, fly safe. I'm wearing a sweatshirt. There's cards we have in the back. We have a dispatch. The back of the room is a poster that are in all the aircraft hangars. The fuel island where you get gas, please use runway 02. We have very, very active outreach. And also say, we also have a fly safe program. We do a monthly seminar. It's in partnership with the FAA. We're the only airport in the US that does this. And we also give a monetary incentive for pilots that complete an FAA wings-based credit, which means they have continuing education of pilot proficiency. Last year, we had 458 pilots attend our seminars. Each of those is anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours. At those seminars, we just don't talk about this is what happens with an engine loss after takeoff. It's our opportunity, my opportunity, David now Kay's opportunity. When we're in here, we provide a trough that everyone wants to drink from, but it also gives us an opportunity to talk about noise and some of these other aspects, as opposed to beating people over the head. You should do this, you should do this. We provide a forum truly to increase safety, but it also gives us an opportunity to engage and talk one-on-one in rooms like this. So last year we had 458 pilots, locals attend those meetings, and we also had some transients as well. I consider our Fly Safe program directly linked to being good neighbors in our Fly Quiet program. Next slide.
I think that's,
Okay, so let's talk about.
all right, so
Laser fuel.
let's file a complaint, shall we? If I can figure out how to get out of here for a second. All right, so after calling a lot of you, there was an overall concern of just how hard it seemed to file a complaint, whether it be online or via the hotline. So, I just want to show you that if we pull up a Google and let's just say we're gonna complain about, what if I can type, aircraft noise, Truckee Airport. Jeff, yours is not yours, that's awesome. Oh, shoot, that's funny. Here it is. So when I Google it, it comes up. So the reason it might be complicated is because we use this program called Plane Noise. And Plane Noise is a inbox essentially. So it collects the online data and the hotline data, and it puts it all in together for us to look at it and analyze it. So I'll just punch in my name. Good morning. And we'll just say it was today, right now, my location. I'm just trying to do you know the airport address?
10356.
Airport Road?
Yep.
All right, there it is. Anyway. Let's say it's my house. And then it's all just drop down, so let's say, I don't know. Excessive noise. And it was a jet. And it was probably white and red. And direction, we'll say headed away. And you can say, I'm very mad, or whatever. And then that's it. So, that's it. Shall we try it via phone?
Sure.
All right. Let's see. You can also Google this, and it should pop up with the hotline. Maybe I'll go back to my PowerPoint. Let's see. All right. Okay. So let's see. So I think here's the phone number. The hotline is right there. I dialed it the other day to practice. Don't know if we'll be able to.
This line is recorded. Please leave an email message so you can properly record and investigate your concern. And please leave the exact date and time you experienced it. Then your full name, beginning with your first name and spelling your last name. Your phone number, including area code, your complete street address, including house number, street, city, town, and zip code, and a detailed description of your concern. All inquiries are logged into our county management database, reviewed, analyzed, mapped, and reported to airport manager and the airport board of directors. Please begin speaking at the tone.
Oh, hi, my name is Kay. I'm upset. Aircraft that flew into my house. I live at 123 blah 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 street in Truckee. My phone number is 123456789. And was that it was a lot of information. So first and last name, spell it out. Essentially, we just kind of know like we need like who you are, where you are, when it happened, what happened, and some way just to contact you. And the best thing about this, if you call in one time, that's the only time you'll have to listen to that menu again. So you dial the number again and select one, it'll bypass that menu. And if you just want to rattle off, you know, where again, when and where, who you are, we'll have your data stored. So it will be much easier to find you. So you just have to get through the one time of listening to the long menu and giving us your first initial data. And then from there, we can go on. But the details of the flight and what happened was more important. So those are the two ways that you can make a complaint. And from there, the backside of things, very hard to see. But the top box is the plane noise. So that was the one that we called and left the comment with or submitted the web form. And that's what I see when you guys say, so I called a bunch yesterday and Jeff called, so my name's up there. And then that's where we listen to the audio and then we can fill it in and kind of create like this little profile for you. And then there's another program that ties it all together with the flight track data, which is called Vector. And Vector is pretty cool. Vector uses all the aircraft ADS-B and it tracks all the movement, essentially from the aircraft. So we have cameras that are placed out on the runways and taxiways, so we know whenever a plane taxis by, it captures that data. And then it uploads it into the software to the program. And if you call about the same time as that flight happened, it usually is pretty good at linking that data. So it'll take your comment and link it to the flight, and then we can analyze the data from there. It's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. I didn't realize the software was, I don't know, I was pretty stoked about the software when I first started. So we can analyze everything. So it tracks everything. So we can review flight data from a certain time frame. Like this busy corner, this was just from a couple hours on Monday. So you can pull up a bunch of data, you can shrink it all down to just the one specific flight. And so when you're taking a look and trying to repaint this picture of what happened, as Larry said, there's a lot of factors to consider. So I'll go and pull up the ATC audio, which is sometimes reliable, sometimes it's not. But you wanna hear all sides of the story, right? You wanna hear what the tower was saying, you wanna hear what the pilot was saying, you wanna know if there was traffic reasons or separation reasons. I'll take a look at the weather as well to see, you know, if it was gusty or if it was windy or whatever. So a lot of, I don't know, a lot of consideration to do this investigation to see, you know, why they were off course. You know, and if it was odd, you can also, you know, reach out to that pilot or to the operator and be like, "Yeah." But, so there's a lot of consideration that goes into it before I reply to you. And then when I do reply, very small, but in if you have an email address left with us, it's pretty neat. You'll get this reply back with this map of the track. And sometimes the house, like the little locator house isn't very accurate on there, but it'll give you the data. It also sends you like the weather picture as well. And then I'll type out a nice exclamation or just try and give you the story. The whatever went down with that pilot or that situation. So that's kind of how it works, how it's processes. Yeah.
Verify, if I make a call because there's a plane running from my house in southeast Ventura, it's nearly take off from there. It's to be able to traffic the area. People then notify the pilot and ask why it's finding that route.
Sometimes, yeah, if it's obscure, if it's kind of odd, yeah,
The weather is
totally. Yep, for sure.
I realize we contact them, we ask them and we inform them. We have no authority, we can't give a ticket, we can't ground them. But I mean, we very actively, and I will also be honest. Very rarely, when we receive a noise complaint, is there something that a pilot is blatantly doing something out of the blue? There's typically something else going on, by and large. So. But we do reach out.
Also to clarify, it sounds like you're really reliant on us reaching out, because I probably
We
call.
reach out, if Larry sees something, or we see something, we reach out. I've walked out to the ramp and talked to pilots when I just see something visually that looks odd. So it's not just going, if we see something that's really out of the ordinary, we will address it and educate to the best we can.
Following the plane.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Sure.
It's kind of a pain in the butt to go online. Not tonight.
Right.
Rather than have an app or something, so it's.
Well, you can go online too, the online one, okay, yeah.
So let me wrap up some comments here.
Just real quick, if you don't mind, Rob,
Yeah.
sorry. On that, Jeff said it, but I have numerous times told pilots they have not flown a procedure correctly, and then I will get a hold of DBQ or K, and they would reach out to that pilot. Because we're not the first, but we're the ones that see it the first. And we can also, I know DBQ has gone out a bunch of times for us, for pilots not operating safely, not necessarily not following the noise abatement, but not operating safely. So, yeah, so we do have a lot of conversation with the airport, sorry.
So I just want to wrap up kind of the formal presentation piece, then and turn over questions you might have here and online. Our mission statement for the airport district is up on the wall here, and you'll see the word community up there, and it's really important to the core of what we do here. It's in our strategic plan, it's part of our vision, it's our mission statement. It's the underlying tenets of most of our goals that we pursue on a regular basis. Some of the programs you see have been identified by the board of directors of a primary focus, and it really honors and respects the priority of the community, and not just the aviation community, but the entire community that lives in the North Lake Tahoe area when we talk about community. So we look at $2 million last year doing the wildfire mitigation projects across the whole North Lake Tahoe area, across all the fire districts. That's our opportunity, our methodology of engaging the community to give something back to the community as well. We talk about fly safe programs, fly quiet programs, fly SAF programs. SAF is sustainable aviation fuel. We're the only airport in the country, if not the world, that only provides sustainable aviation fuel to our jet customers. That lowers the emissions And that benefits the overall community. It costs a little bit more for the pilots. They are paying into this program to be part of this community, to honor our community values. People who live and operate or recreate in this area. And so it's a nice marriage of these two things together. And I think both the pilot, transient, and local operators respect that. And the local community, I hope, is aware of that and hopefully becomes informed of that, not aware of that. So let me stop there and just take the rest of the time to address questions that are here. I'll try to bounce the questions between people live in the audience and DBQ if you can manage. If you're online, and you have a question, if you can use your electronic hand online, I'll ask David Van Quest to kind of queue up folks there and we'll go to the questions online as well. And let's start, the first person who was here tonight.
Did you want to type with this?
I was.
Oh, thanks. You got me this slide. So before we go to questions, there is a noise symposium coming up here. The information was up there. We put some information in our literature that went out already. We're looking for volunteers from the community that would like to attend this symposium to be better informed globally about how the FAA operates around noise and annoyance, what the rules and regulations are, different kind of aircraft emission noises, signatures, really detailed information. And the airport district plans on funding 2 community members to go to that. So if you're interested in doing that, please come talk to one of the folks up here that was speaking today. We'd like to jot down your information. You're welcome to sign up over there in the sign-in sheet on the side. And we'll go through and try to select appropriate people from the local community. Not just pilots, not just hangar tenants, but folks that are living in the community that are impacted and want to build their information on this area. So thank you for the reminder on that. Okay, let's go with the questions and we'll start right up front here. Please.
Okay, so a while ago, I attended a meeting and there was a discussion about increasing the length of runway. Is that still in the works or is that not happening at all?
Currently, we've gone through some iterations of that.
Up to. A
Yes,
short one,
yes.
sorry.
We've gone through some iterations of them, kind of probably about 2 years ago, roughly when we were talking
Yeah.
about. And we were looking at the possibilities of adding a 3rd runway here instead of 2 runways to direction the traffic away from some of the community hotspots. We looked at some detailed analysis around that. We looked at also expanding and widening our short runway, our crosswind runway, which is the O2 departure, which was talked about earlier, to make it a little bit longer for those transit operators that are restricted by policy or aircraft limitations that need a longer runway over 5,000 feet, like our main runway. So we looked at a number of those. We did some analysis with master plan, phase 1 update. Currently, we put all that on hold. And that's something we're going to talk again with the new board of directors that's been elected this last year. We have 1 new member, Greg Horvath, that's joined the board. We're going to go through a strategic planning process over the next couple of months and revisit what the priorities of the elected board of directors are about whether or not we want to move into continuing the program and funding and studies around either a 3rd runway or lengthening and widening the existing short crosswind runway. So, for a number of reasons. I wouldn't say shelved, I would say it was temporarily paused while we were under litigation with some FAA, what we call Part 13 complaints about on-airfield operators that had some complaints about the rents they were paying for the services they were providing and what we were charging. We had to settle those disputes before we continue with the FAA to talk about additional things here. And that was just the FAA's process about settling the existing problems that we have. Those have all been settled and resolved. 1 operator no longer operates here. Another operator is happily has a multi-year operating agreement on the airfield. So I think those have been resolved to everyone's satisfaction. Yeah, so we're going to move into the next phase of planning again. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, some of those processes take a long time. Thank you for the question. We have one online. David.
Yeah, if someone on Zoom wants to raise their hand, and we'll go to some questions on Zoom. MK, you're stop this, you can share. Thanks. So someone on Zoom, you'd like to raise your hand?
While you're thinking on Zoom, let's go back. I know I saw a hand back. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. I just. The airport is in Truckee, it's obviously paid for by Truckee. But you don't really have any control of what comes in and how long. Your job is to just make sure that it's safe.
The basic tenets of a public airport, which is what we are, we're a special airport district in California. We're a public airport. We're part of the National Airport System Program of the FAA, which means pilots can fly in and out of here at their discretion. 24 hours a day.
So if you expanded the short runway or added a runway, it automatically.
That's not, I would say that's true. Air traffic can increase right now. If more people want to fly here, they can.
But not if you expand the runways, it automatically.
I don't think there's a direct correlation between, we don't have any control of it now. We certainly, we have roughly 30,000 operations a year. So that's about 15,000 aircraft, because you count operation twice, takeoff, landing. A good portion of those are gliding operations. They're on airfield here for gliders. They're kind of around the local area.
Common sense kind of says expand.
It would move the traffic off the long runway over Truckee to a different runway that's wider. And I would argue that people are coming here for the lake and the mountains, period. If we closed the runway, they would all go to the arena. If we made it a gargantuan and gave them free red truck cookies, almost nothing, Jeff hypothesis, nothing we do will change the aircraft coming in and out of here. They're coming in here because it's a gorgeous,
There's
place.
also an airport, major airport. So.
We have to control that. And I would just add too that we have received $40+ million in the past 25 years. So we are obligated by the federal government. We've also, when this airport was established, received federal funds to buy some of the land. So effectively, it's a California special district, but we're obligated to the Department of Transportation, the FAA, and then we have to follow all those rules. Every airport in the US does.
What's the incentive to expand the runways?
To move the traffic off the long runway.
So tonight, we've had really long past meetings.
Yeah.
Multiple days about runway expansions. If we get into that and that is considered in the future, there'll be a lot more meetings on specific runway analysis, all details behind that. Those will be public meetings with the full board of directors here. And so there's a lot ahead on that. There's no decision that's been made or that's on the near horizon this year that's going to be made that addresses any kind of changes in runway. Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Let me just check online again and we'll go over it.
Got one question in the chat. For anyone else wants to ask a question, please raise your hand on Zoom and we'll get to you. But so far in the chat, one of the questions was, could we touch on the repetitive training airplanes that fly touch and goes?
Yeah, so we do have a number of CFIs, folks that provide pilot instruction here at the airport. There are legitimate commercial activities that happen at the airport and at other airports. Part of their training program is to make sure pilots are proficient. And that often requires a lot of takeoffs and landings, a lot of short turns in the area. Larry, you have regular conversations with the CFI crowd that's doing pilot training, and we encourage on a regular basis to limit the number of patterns they're taking and the same pattern. The 3, I think, is currently what we're talking.
5.
3 to 5, yeah.
Is it 3 or is it 5?
Sarah, does that sound about right?
It's 5.
5.
Fine,
Thank
is
you.
what we asked. Again, we can't control it. If you hopped in an airplane and did 75 in a row, you can do 75 in a row. I guarantee you though, okay, or I don't talk to you afterwards and like, hey, What's going on?
Really want to minimize the
And
impact
we
of the
would reach
community.
out.
That's right.
Last year, there were two, let's say egregious events where it was 29 touching-goes in a row. We talked to the pilot, generated about 11 noise complaints. I talked to the pilot, David talked to the pilot, and the pilot was unaware and not gonna do it again. So we do our best.
Great.
So just from the tower
Yeah.
perspective on that, touch and goes are valuable training for the pilots, the CFIs, or the pilots that are flying, getting their proficiency training. If they say, hey, tower, I've done 5, can I switch to another runway? If we can do it safely and the traffic flows, I talked about runway selection. One thing I didn't talk about, if you want to learn more about what we do here at Truckee, May 14th, there's an air traffic 101 course, we call it. Where it's a longer day, a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours. But we can tell you, but if a pilot asks to change to a different runway and we can do so safely, we will honor that request. If we are flowing multiple jets or multiple piston or other arrivals to the runway that is most aligned with the wind, if there is wind, if it's calm wind, and we've already sequenced 4 or 5 other airplanes into the pattern to land on a specific runway, we can change that other aircraft to that crossing runway if we can do so safely. If we can't do so safely, Sarah can tell you, other CFIs that are here tonight will tell you that we will get to you. It's just that it might not be when you first ask, but we do try to do that. We don't count the number of operations and then ask the pilot to change. That's up to the pilot. That's not our responsibility.
Please.
I'd like to make some comments
Sure.
on questions. First, I think the danger of increasing capacity or the number of operations in the airport is much more directed at how many based aircraft you have there. So building hangars, and they will come and they will base their aircraft here and they will come and go as at will. So there's a danger if you continue to build out hangars that you're going to increase the number of operations. Albeit presumably local pilots who presumably are a little more sensitive to their impact on the community.
Yeah.
Another statement I'll make is that there's a direct correlation between the elevation of the airport and the safety. The higher you are I will say the higher the elevation, the higher the risk of flying because of many of the reasons, weather, mountains, wildlife. It's not anything inherent with the tarmac that's perfectly safe, static, whatever. It's the elevation of the airport. So people making choices to fly into a high elevation airport are making a relatively risky decision. And then the third thing I'll say is that noise complaints, I would suspect, go down in winter as we're all huddled up in our nice insulated houses. It's only in summer where the disturbance really starts taking off.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. And something we didn't talk about, maybe I just share real quickly here is the guidance from the board of directors to me as general manager for the last 2+ years now has been utilize the existing infrastructure we have here versus build new. And so we've taken that to heart. And one of the things that our director of aviation has led for us is piloting just launched this year, is a VRBO or an Airbnb for hangars, where we can use the existing capacity here better instead of building new hangars. And that is being launched, and we're one of the first airports in the US doing that. So we can get folks that need to be in here overnight. There could be downsides of that. But right now it gets in bad weather situations, particularly in the winter, it gets aircraft off the ramp or repositioning constantly because of weather, and we get them tucked in the aircraft hangar. So we're just seeing some good traction on that, which is very helpful. And the other piece is just the Fly Safe program that Jeff talked about earlier. We really are making a concerted effort to launch the only program in the nation that partners with the FAA's Wings program to train, to provide continuing education to pilots to operate in the mountains here, and it's been tremendously received by the pilot community here to increase. I know you have follow up.
Yeah, just to follow up,
Yeah.
building big hangars but big planes. We can argue whether big planes make more noise than smaller planes, but they certainly seem more disturbing when you have one going over your
I'm more
house.
disturbed, a
Yeah,
higher pitch to it.
well, it's a different, yeah, it's a different noise.
It's a different noise,
Yeah.
and when a propeller goes over, I'm like, whatever, a jet goes over, and I might kill my husband.
So I'm just suggesting building big houses might have to take
Yeah. Thank you. And we're gonna keep going around and taking questions, and if I can, as much as we can limit the additional commentary, pile on, like, yeah. That would be helpful. We're your local crowd here. We're here to get your feedback and we want to hear it. I want to do it respectfully for everybody in the room here tonight. So I would just ask if we could just focus our comments and we'll do our best to address those or take note of them and follow up with you afterwards. I'll come back to you in the back of the room, and then David, anybody online?
My comments, we appreciate your comments. Doesn't look like we're seeing too many direct questions. But,
Okay. Sure.
I don't think anyone on Zoom can hear anyone in the room, so I'm gonna pass this to.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Yeah.
You don't have to talk real loud into it, because you will be really loud.
So it sounds like things happen when someone makes a complaint and there's some follow through, and I appreciate that. What are the consequences to the pilot or maybe even to the aircraft after a complaint? Sounds like the consequences are, you'll reach out to them, there'll be some communication or kind of follow through. Is that the limit? Is there some instance where maybe repeat offender has you can't give them you can't reward them for good behavior? It's, if I understood the earlier comment, can you do things like increase the cost of their jet fuel? Can you increase the cost of their hangar? Can you run an ad this year or so where half of it's a list of the pilots and the planes that are doing a really good job, and the other half of it's the side that's not doing such a great job? How do we as a community really feel in a more meaningful way that our voices are actually resulting in follow through effort, a change?
Great questions. There's a lot of real components to those comments, right? And what can we do? And I think we've tried to make an earnest approach to treating it like a family and like a community. And as the comments of Larry and Jeff and Kay regularly do, we reach out to those pilots and have one-on-one conversations with them about the impact that has been created by something they did. Intentional, unintentional, whatever it might be. There is an impact, and we're hearing from the community about that impact, where they, flying a little bit low, a little bit off a procedure, totally legal in the air by the FAA rules. Totally legal, they can do it. There's no ticket to be had, there's no consequences for your pilot's license, but it has an impact. And whether we see it, or the community lets us know they see it and it impacts them, we try to make meaningful engagements with those pilots about that. It's not a shaming campaign. It's not a lecture. It's more of you're impacting your neighbors, and can we do this differently next time? And that is the approach we've made a concerted effort to take for several years now. And I think it's produced tremendous results in the positive for the community. You've seen the numbers continue to drop. And so that's the approach we've been taking. To be honest. Right in the middle.
Thank you. Could you just speak to helicopter traffic at night?
Yeah, the majority of helicopter traffic, I will say probably 95% of it is care flight that is based here at the airport that is responding to emergencies within their jurisdictional area between, I'll say, Sacramento and Reno, depending on who else is covering different areas. They have cleared rights to take off and the special procedures, and will fly to the destination of the crash or the emergency response that's needed for the life flight. And that happens, and that's the majority of the helicopter activity that happens out here at night. In the summertime, we do get some focused pre-staging on CAL FIRE and US Forest Service fire response aircraft that we put on the airfield here that we will respond out of the control of the centralized firefighting authorities in the region. That will dispatch them to either observation or spot fires or support major fires that are happening in the area. They will either stage here and operate like the Bear Fire was mentioned earlier. Over that 2 or 3 day period, they were staged here with a number of helicopters. We probably had 2 to begin with, and they brought 2 more here, stage it here, because we have a right-sized airport with the facilities and infrastructure to support those firefighting helicopters. fuel, an area to do maintenance, somewhere for the personnel to sleep. And we like that, to be honest, for the community, because we can get them in action faster to local fires when they happen. Sometimes those happen. A lot of it, this past summer, the rotary ring firefighting helicopter here had a capability to fight fires at night, and that vision goggles. Not they all don't have that, and so we do have that capacity here, and they are needed. They do run constant sorties at night, coming back here to refuel often, many times, running buckets of water to those fires to try to keep them from expanding. Those are very infrequent, I would say, over the course of summer. They are staged here. They do training flights. Typically aren't at night, but occasionally they are. But the vast majority, unless you've seen different numbers, is care flight operating at night. Yeah.
I've never seen a helicopter operate here at nighttime. It was not care flight or firefighting. The years I've been here, it doesn't happen. So it's care flight or fire response.
And then the other portion of that helicopters even could be at nighttime or when the tower's open. The tower specifically, when it's open, if it's a CHP or law enforcement of some kind, the FAA does not allow the controllers to ask them where they're going or what they're doing, because there could be bad guys listening on a scanner. So we just tell them to proceed as requested. So that's one thing from the tower. We don't want to get in their way. When I worked in Sacramento, before that came out, we would ask them where they were going there. So we go into the intersection of 80 and 5 or 50 and 5. And then they'd get laser illuminated by the bad guys on the ground, because now they knew where they were at, or the drug guys were going someplace else. So if it is a law enforcement helicopter, you won't hear us asking which way they're gonna go, if we're open.
Please.
Following up on that other question about repeat offenders. Following up on that other question about repeat offenders, are there a lot of repeat offenders? Like, and are there repeat offenders over sustained periods of time? You mentioned like people doing a bunch of touch and goes. Yep. Are there people who like consistently fly into the airport and consistently generate municipal plans?
I wouldn't say, yeah,
No.
yeah. I'm trying to think of a tail number, right?
No. Typically, when we reach out to a pilot, I'd say 90% of the time, it's geez. I was unaware of that, or there's a little bit of a longer conversation about what was going on. But I'm not aware of any repeat offenders.
Hi, Jamie McChumpkin, who used to be a board member of Protect Our Winters, routinely flies out at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Routinely.
Okay.
I know the name doesn't matter.
Is it generating noise complaints?
Well, David told me.
Typically, when he does, he departs off runway 11, and we don't get noise complaints on that aircraft.
So you know, David told me years ago that any.
And he doesn't do it regularly, by the way.
Any sorry, I was trying to finish.
Okay.
David told me years ago that any pre-curfew flight he was aware of and contacted directly.
Right.
So I stopped personally filing complaints because father, he was taking care of it. So
yeah.
So maybe it doesn't generate noise complaints because, for one, he doesn't stop. And two, it didn't seem necessary. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. I know Jamie, I've talked to him a number of times, and I would say he's a very community-focused individual and is very conscious and very responsive to our requested parameters for operations. I mean, I've interacted over 2+ years now with many individuals, and being one of them, and I would say very responsive to the community.
It's hard to hear that when I know that he's flown over my house 20+ times pre-7 o'clock in the morning, and you guys have obviously spoken to him, so it doesn't seem very receptive or community focused. That seems selfish.
I just have a different.
Well,
I have a different
would say
viewpoint.
that, right. You know, I don't want to get in an argument. I mean, there's a lot of moral ethical questions we can dive into. But I would say as a pilot, he can absolutely do that. And I would say when he does, it's usually for a very specific reason, and he uses I would say, the quietest procedures we have. So it's either runway 02 or off runway 11, and his aircraft has the power to make that climb. And there are almost no residents that live over there.
So it's interesting, actually, we received a comment back and forth with David, when he does take off that way, we do hear it.
Yeah.
That way as well.
You can.
We absolutely.
I would encourage you not to give up on letting us
No,
know
let
if it's
us know.
impacting you, please, and we'll continue to have these conversations like we do with all of
When we
them.
reach out, right? You know,
In the very back of the room, I do see your hand, thank you for being patient, yes.
Hi, I live in the Ponderosa Fairway Estates neighborhood, and I wanted to address your comment about, numbers going down and the number of complaints, and so you think that's an indication that you're doing a better job and there's less noise. Well, in my personal experience, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, the first couple of years that I moved into the neighborhood, I would, call or get online, every time, not every time the plane flew over my house, but every time it was like, whoa, especially noisy, that it really felt especially disruptive. And just about every time I would get a call back saying, basically, yep, a plane flew over your house. And so, then I learned more about the restrictions that you all have on enforcing and I was aware of the hours, so I would also call more often if it was outside of the request hours. So when I learned that you basically have no enforcement powers, and when I continually just got calls back saying, yep, a plane flew over your house, I stopped calling in complaints. And I doubt I'm the only one. And so, I just want to say, I don't think that that's a good indicator of success. And I also would recommend finding a different way to try and get the community's pulse on if they feel like you're doing better or worse than a given year.
Yeah, thank you. Great comment. And I would say that's part of why we're having this meeting tonight, to try to get a better pulse of the community and make sure people haven't given up calling in. And if there are genuine impacts that are happening, that we could do something about and partner with you all. So thank you for making that comment, and don't give up on helping us track the stats. It is a hard number we do look at. Part of the trend that has changed over the last year is I think it's 7% shift in utilization of our crosswind runway and our less impactful departure here. And so I think between our advertising, our working with the pilots, transient and local, and the towers work, we actually are seeing a shift in utilization patterns of lower impact departures and arrivals coming in and out of here. So that's one of the trends we do look at, along with feedback from the community, and we track at the hard metrics of are people calling, are they reporting things? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I live in Prosser Heights on Barnes Drive, and we get a lot of departures over our neighborhood, a lot. And I've been told that one of the new procedures is the Mowgli one in comparison to the Truck 5 or the Truck. And the Mowgli one apparently goes a little bit more over 89 north as opposed to over the neighborhoods, which would be a great way to disperse the noise, but doesn't seem like that's really helping. I don't know if that's something that can be suggested more often to pilots.
Yeah, thank you for commenting that. I would ask Larry, who deals with it on a regular basis.
Yeah, so the instrument departures that come off of here, I would say in the probably high 90% of the instrument departures do get the Mobile 2 departure. And there's a reason for that, and that's the Oakland Center controllers that control the airspace above us. They love that departure because there's no course reversal like was on the Mogul 2, so they are on the Truck 5, I'm sorry. So on the Mogul 2, we can have 2 departures take off with standard separation of 5 miles that the center requires, to where when it was the Truck 5, they had to wait until that other aircraft completed that turn in holding and left the area. So we're more efficient with that. And I would say 92 to 96% of all IFR departures that are equipped will be on the mobile departure, because that's what the center controller assigns. We don't assign that. We get the clearance from the center. We relay that to the pilot. Some pilots file the Mobile 2 departure, some will not, and that could be equipment in the airplane. So it's whatever the center gives us based on what the pilots file. That makes sense. And it's a lot more efficient for air traffic in the area.
Let me go to somebody else first. Thanks.
Not really.
Somewhat, I was mainly just trying to get them to stay over 89 more as opposed to over the houses, which that might be difficult, but I would assume that if it's visual VFR, that they can see the road underneath them.
Yes, for the most part, if VFR aircraft are departing to the north, we'll either take them off of runway 2 to the scales and then they'll go over the reservoirs. 89, we try to stay away from that corridor, but sometime I talked about that hotspot over the truck scales. So if somebody's coming in from Stampede, somebody's coming in from Reno, and both of them are gonna end up at the scales at the same time, we might have one follow Highway 89 in towards the airport to keep them separated. But now the instrument aircraft, that ground track is repeatable and predictable based on the navigation equipment. They should be right on the departure procedure, which we have it displayed up in the tower cab, but I don't see anybody drifting one way or the other too much.
Okay.
Sure. We're gonna ask you a microphone over there. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
I'm gonna make a comment. Hi, my name's Scott. I've been flying at the Truckee Airport since 1983. And I just wanna say, I've been to a lot of airports on the West Coast in my career, and there's no airport, unlike Truckee, that is doing the job you guys are doing, that the general public is benefiting from for fly quiet, fly safe, given our environment, we're not in a cornfield. You know, we have lots of big hard things around us. I've got one complaint. I was flying required night takeoff and landings out of Reno and had to come back for currency, and it's very black when you look out the windshield coming from Reno to Truckee. And there's, Boca Hill on the right and so forth, and coming up the river, and I see the great lights of the Truckee Airport. And so I made a straight line for, right over, the tower was closed, so right over the airport and landed 29, and I got a complaint from maybe the lady in Glenshire, but Kay reached out and I explained my situation. It was very understandable. The other thing I'd like to add, if any of you non-pilots would like to go for a ride on a busy day, and we can go do the departures and arrivals and listen to Larry's crew and how they manage all the different types of airplanes and different types of pilotage abilities coming and going. I'll be in the back and I'll offer a ride. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comment and offer. Anybody online?
Yeah, we got someone on Zoom right now who raised their hand. Jesse Quay, I'm gonna ask you, there you go, you're unmuted, go ahead.
Hey there, thanks everyone. Thanks for having the forum. I really appreciate it. It's obviously a big deal for folks, especially living around the airport. Basic question, is there a noise threshold in the neighborhoods that is deemed unacceptable by the FAA or the Truckee Airport? And if so, what level? And if this level is recorded regularly, what is the consequence? Does it go anywhere? And I just would ask if the Truckee Airport would be willing to distribute noise monitors through the airport as opposed, or through the community, as opposed to relying on people complaining, which is, understandable but archaic. You want to track data, put sensors out, track it.
Yeah, thank you for that question. A great comment. It's certainly something we've talked about. The noise levels for FAA above ground level were set, I think, in the mid-70s and haven't changed.
Yeah, so Jesse, great question. As Rob said, the thresholds were set a long time ago with what's called stage 1, stage 2 jet aircraft, little turbojets. Think your 727s, your early DC-8s. The current standard, your 65 decibel contour line, all the contour lines that the FAA cares about fall on airport property, do not go over the houses. So if you were to go to the Aircraft Noise Emissions Symposium in Las Vegas and get the big deep briefings, and you were to look at Truckee from an FAA perspective, this is not the Truckee Tahoe Airport perspective. Be very transparent. The FAA would look at this airport and say, there's nothing to see here. what a great job you did by keeping all of your 65 decibel contour lines on property. We could go do noise measuring, all the data we have, we've done it before. All of the contour lines fall well within the airport property. I don't say that to try to justify anything, I just say that the facts as they are and how the FAA looks at it. However, the FAA is re-examining the 65 noise decibel line. There's been a lot of research in public health of how noise impacts the human body. And the FAA is seeking feedback. The Truckee Tahoe Airport Board of Directors provided feedback to the FAA last year. It was in the Federal Registry. So the FAA is relooking this based on current technology of aviation, which is a lot quieter than it was back in the 70s.
And particularly our response to the FAA was consider the resort environment where we have influx by seasonality of aircraft and the proximity of communities to airports and the mountainous terrain of the airports like we have. Very different than the flatland cornfield noise parameters that was set up in the original noise studies. And that was some of our recommendations to think about for the future.
To piggyback on that, Truckee's gonna always have a problem with the FAA because it's an inherently quiet place unless you're by I-80 or by the airport. So average noise is a very weird concept. And that's not what we're bugged by. We're bugged by individual elements of noise, not average noise.
Yes.
So it is measured?
Good point. It is not measured currently here. There are some airports in the country that are commercial ones that do that, to ensure the noise isn't escaping the airport boundaries, and some actually do that on a regular basis.
We have
in our
measured it,
required,
and it is modeled here. So we can actually pull up an aircraft and based on modeling, the type of aircraft, the flight path, the track, see where the 60, 65, 70 decibel noise contours are.
About 15 years ago, I was involved with some noise measurement around here, and at one of the noise stations, the birds were making more noise. Yeah, honestly.
Or the squirrels are bad too.
it's a train, it's a lot of ambient noise that's here, I-80.
And when we measured it with the flight tracking data, you may have heard the term tonight, ADS-B, the noise correlation is directly correlated to the flight track from the ADS-B flight track. So yes, the noise, the river, wind, there's all kinds of things. But when it was modeled in the past and when we do the modeling, it's based on the flight track for what that's worth.
They go in the back.
Yeah, I'll be reading much better more. But I guess you can train a pilot, you can as a pilot, like this gentleman said, get a noise complaint, respond to it, learn from it. I appreciate all of that. There seems to be maybe pilots that repeat offend or don't care or stand behind their rights to pilot their aircraft in the manner they do. I don't know that, I don't know what can be done about that. But there are also inherently noisy airplanes. So I'm gonna guess, I know I've never complained about the glider, but the glider towing plane is noisy. My car has rules, I have a right to drive it, freedom of the roads, everything else. My car has rules that how noisy, I have to have the muffler, I gotta get it, those things have to be tested. Do planes have similar rules? Can something be done to, encourage quieter aircraft to utilize our quiet town airport? And in converse, could a plane that's kind of known to be loud, just mechanically, it's towing, it's doing what it's doing, could it be, could there be some mechanism by which that's addressed? Funds towards making that plane quieter, making it less comfortable for them to perhaps conduct their business here, increasing their jet fuel costs, because the fuel that's going to that plane is going towards a noise problem that other planes don't have, I'm curious what you might say, not just about pilot training, but about equipment issues.
Yeah, I love the creative ideas, absolutely, things that have been discussed. We do have limitations on what authority we have to tell people how to operate their aircraft. We really don't. How noisy it is, how not noisy it is not regulated by the Truckee Airport. In the past, the airport has spent some funds on helping some local operators here on the airfield change out propellers to quieter propellers. That's an inappropriate use of public funds, and FAA has told us we can't do that. Shouldn't have done it in the first place. So we won't be doing that unless something changes on the use of public funds. I don't anticipate that changing at all. So we're really limited on the funds that we do have, wherever the source of them, whether it's airfield revenue, tax revenue, whatever it might be, we are limited in how we spend those funds. And how we can't spend them is to benefit one pilot or one business over another one. Mentioned earlier, grant assurances, the FAA has, federal rules that we have to follow because we've taken federal money, which basically is a common sense rule of you have to treat everybody the same. You can't pick favorites and, reward certain businesses and not others by discounting fuel or increasing the cost of fuel or parts for aircraft that are less noisy than other ones. So we're really fairly restricted on how we do that. I love the ideas. They make sense, right? But us as a public organization are very restricted in how we can actually implement those ideas. Sure.
When did that online software was implemented?
The ADSB or the noise software?
Well, the online, we can file a complaint.
I think it's over 7 years now. We've been using the online.
2016.
16. It's been in place.
I too would make phone calls. In order to, you have to go inside, get on your computer, do all that, and then if you're working outside, you don't have a phone on you.
Yeah, the timeliness of it.
Well, I have
So
a comment on that.
what,
Again, so I live in the Ponderosa.
Just
Yeah,
one second.
yeah.
Can you finish, please? We'll go right to you next.
but it was just, I too would make phone calls, but the flight patterns of the planes were still going over our home.
Right.
And even though they're supposed to be off the bluff,
Yeah.
and they were still, it didn't stop it.
Right.
And so I too stopped making the phone calls.
Yeah.
Because, and the online would be useful, but you have to, quickly, all right, do I have a phone? What time is it?
Right.
And then go make the complaint.
Yeah. So a lot of the, go ahead. Yes, please.
Well,
Yeah.
so I make noise complaints fairly regular. I'm probably at 1.2 every 60 days. But
That's okay.
well, I do it on their website, but I do it on my phone. I have it saved to my home screen. And I usually make the noise complaint because I'm outside and I can see the pilot's face because he's that close to my house because I live so close to the airport. But if it's very loud, I mean, I recognize that's where they need to fly. I'm very close to the bypass. So it's not that they're in the wrong place. It's just that it's excessively loud and I want the airport to know it. So I have it on my home screen. It's very easy to fill out because a lot of it is auto-filled once you've done it once. So that might be a way to get away from feeling like you have to run inside if you have a phone in your pocket.
Yes, I'm working out in the yard and,
Yeah, love to talk to that first, Kay, can talk with you about how we could best document and track those. So that we can take action and follow up by those and what works best for you. Whether it's a phone call, straight to a recording device or the existing system, or just jot down some notes and we check in with you when it's convenient for you. I'm sure we could find ways to work with you to get that works with your lifestyle and your schedule. The reality is that we're not in a position to change something as it's happening. We're trying to record the information so we can follow up with those pilots and follow up with the people that are giving us the feedback. And then to get to the point more than just annually, we're having these kind of conversations of, where are we at with the community and the airport and the impact? And is the needle tipping way over here like intolerable? Is it, what airport? Is it way over there? Or is it somewhere in the middle? We're kind of trying to read and everybody has a different perspective. And this helps us get a perspective, helps our elected officials get a perspective on where we're at, how much more we want to put energy around things around the airport that may or may not directly impact the number of operations here, which is very hard to do, other than the stock market.
Second question. Are you guys going to be expanding more in this airport? I'm taking into consideration of our surroundings, our homes,
Yeah.
I just feel like I mean, we've been here since 1979 and I've seen the airport just blow. And I am a little concerned with that.
Yeah.
You know, because I get that our air traffic is getting larger. However, there's a reason why we moved here.
Right.
And it wasn't for the airport,
All of them mountains, yes.
so.
There's no plans for development on the airport property at all right now. As I mentioned earlier, the board of directors for the last several years has very specific direction of maintaining the existing infrastructure. We have a lot of outdated old hangars that are going to require a lot of work and a lot of money to do that work. We maintain the existing runways and taxiways. We have a project this summer to redo the apron out here in front. It was designed currently at about 8 inches deep. It's supposed to be 18 inches deep to put the aircraft out there so they don't punch through the pavement. So all of our work at the airport right now, construction wise, is designed to maintain the existing infrastructure we have, no expansion. There's nothing on the books for expansion here, not new facilities, not more runways. We've done some studies about runways, but there's nothing in place or approved by the FAA or board of directors to actually expand runways or add more runways or add new
No
facilities.
747s.
None, no commercial traffic here, no, yeah. Matter of fact, the one charter operator that was running scheduled service in here, Surf Air, just canceled their contract with us. And they're no longer running scheduled service here anymore. There wasn't enough business. So they canceled it. So it's just gonna be one-off charters of what we see. It's indicator of things. In some ways. Yes, sir.
So I want to start off by saying the airport operations are doing a great job. As far as they got part of it early, as far as fly safe, fly quiet. We're seeing an impact, right? If everybody's flying in here, they want to be here, the jets are getting more increased. That's a nice, I'm actually really stoked with Surf Air, so we can work on the rest of them. That's my biggest thing. Pilots like Scott, like Mike, Sarah, they know how to fly in and out of here. They know the noise abatement procedure, they know all that stuff. As far as the vehicle goes, they gotta get around that, man. They've been flying gliders out of here ever since I moved here 30 years. So that's just, you gotta take the winners as they come. Appreciate the winners that affect the night you fly. So that's a good thing. So like I said, I want to commend you for that. Jeff, on the other hand, I think your documentation is phenomenal. I think you did a great presentation. I think they're lacking one big thing on the wisdom. We started having multiple plane crashes. We didn't talk about the plane crashes at all. I think that's going to be a huge jump in your factor. And I'm also going through the last airport report I got here. You had your documentation saying that complaints were down. And that's a flawed statement. Because people are just giving up. You know, people are giving up calling, they're giving up getting, like the gentleman up front said, he doesn't have access to file a complaint when somebody's flying right eye level with them on the bus. So I think you need to put the crashes in there, and I think you need to reach out to a different kind of community forum. Kay, I think you're doing a great job. We talked about this, you don't live in Truckee proper, so the airplanes really don't affect you as much as they do if you live in Truckee proper. And I just think that you gotta get the documentation, all your data needs to kind of look outside the big picture. And the people that actually live in the Truckee community. And like I said, I think you guys are great. I think the board is phenomenal compared to what the other corrupt board used to be. Back in the day when they ran everybody off the airfield. And now we've got this big massive airport terminal that's welcoming people to fly in here. And what is people coming in here do? They spend money. The economy goes up here in the town. But it's Truckee's love to death. That's it.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Jesse Quay called in, on Zoom, had a whole bunch of questions and I think. Yeah. And, it seemed like you guys did a good job addressing the first set of his questions about what the regulations are from the FAA around noise. But he had a suggestion at the end that I don't think I heard you address about potentially, putting noise monitors around town, and collecting information that way instead of relying on people calling in. I'm hoping you can, address that idea, or if that's not gonna work, suggest something else.
Yeah, it's a great follow-up. You're right. I did catch that earlier. We didn't fully address it. We have discussed that with our board of directors over the past years. It's something we have researched to some level, costs, different types of systems, where you would put them, what information does it really give you? experts that work in that business, giving us some advice about the usefulness of that data or not, given all the other noise that impacts those devices in areas. I haven't totally ruled it out, but it's not something we're actually planning on doing right now, but it could be in our toolkit of something we do in the future. So love the suggestion and follow up on that. Thank you for following up on that question. Something we're going to take out of the meeting today is more good ideas of how we make this a great community here.
I just want to second her idea because I live very close to the airport as well, and the planes will set off my Apple Watch if it's too loud. And the river and train doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So I think you could set it up like Nielsen families.
Right.
And I think it'd be really interesting information because you're relying on us to call in. I bet if you took just a very informal survey, I bet many of us would say, I'm done calling in and logging. Nothing seems to change.
Yeah.
So I think you've got a pretty good forum to tell you that. I think the data again was really useful. But what are you actioning with the data?
Yeah.
And that's what I'd like to see. And I think that idea of noise sensors would be really interesting.
Yeah.
We have the technology.
Yeah,
Let's use it.
the technology is out there. Right?
Yeah, so let's use it.
Yeah.
It's not even big and expensive.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And
Yeah.
it's certainly something we'll continue to discuss and see how we can best integrate that into our overall
That'd
community
be great.
offerings. Sorry.
This one might be a Larry question. Is there a limit to the amount of traffic that it goes out? Like say it's 4th of July, it's busy, people are going out. Are you just sending people out? Like you go right, you go left, you go straight. Is there a limit to the amount of flights I can take off within an hour?
The FAA calls it runway acceptance rate for the arrivals and then a runway departure rate for the departures. And each airport has it in the FAA system. I don't think we've ever done any kind of studies here. Oakland Center, the IFR traffic, even though the airport invested a lot of money in ADSB and gives that data to the FAA for surveillance, they have it on their scope 7 years ago, 6 years ago. The guys at Oakland Center, the controllers at Oakland Center couldn't see below 10,000 feet. Airplanes for them didn't exist below 10,000 feet, but to us, they did. And now when the airport bought that ADSB system and the FAA bought the signal, the surveillance signal, now they can see. So we're more efficient with the airspace. So we can go instead of 10, 15, 20 miles between IFR departures, like capabilities, we can go about 5 miles between departures. VFR departures, what we do from the tower standpoint is we will ask the pilot their direction of flight. The airport has published on their website and it's up in the tower cab, I mentioned it. The departure pass out of here and the arrival pass are separated by Interstate 80 going over Donner Summit. 80% of our traffic probably goes VFR out over the visual flight rules, out over Donner Lake and over to Donner Summit. The rest will go down towards Lake Tahoe or towards Reno. So we will separate those airplanes airborne by giving traffic advisories, but there's no mandatory separation requirement between two VFR airplanes. We will work local committee, give them traffic advisories, but our main concern in the type airspace that we have here at Truckee is runway separation. So each airplane is supported either 3,000 feet, 4,500 feet, or 6,000 feet of runway separation. And yes, 4th of July, Labor Days are the busiest weekend. The Monday of Labor Day weekend is usually our busiest weekend since I've been here. And we're pushing 500 operations a day on that day. And leading up to that whole weekend, it's probably a 1,200 operation weekend from Thursday through Monday. And that's the busiest I've ever been here is on that Labor Day Monday. And so
yeah, it's a noticeable difference where.
Yeah,
it's not like the normal day where I'm at work and I'm not really hearing it, but like some certain holidays obviously seem.
Yeah.
A little more of a nuisance than others.
I won't put a number to it. It's just, it's all based on inbound, outbound traffic and where everybody's going and then what we can do.
And then just one more question. What do you think the benefit is to having like an Airbnb hangar? Does that benefit our community anyway?
Definitely increases revenue for the airport, which allows us to spend less of the tax money on the airfield and in the community instead.
I'll put it to you.
There's a direct correlation with that.
There's no right answer to this, but here's one coin, two sides.
Yeah.
Oh, I can, there's airspace, so I'm coming here. The other side of that same coin, and we've seen it regularly, is I fly in here on the jet. My pilots fly the jet to Reno. I hang out for the weekend, jet comes back to pick me up. So I don't know which, we could argue each endlessly, At least we do the hangar, we can generate some revenue.
So that's something we're trialing, something we can turn off later if we don't find the results are successful for us. Ideally, we're decreasing relocations in operations or increasing revenue for the airport. And we are decreasing the need to build additional hangars to accommodate the demand. There's a lot of demand out there for additional hangars. David, online.
Thank you. We've got a question from Zoom from Susan Safipor. The question is, what can the airport do to reduce the large planes flying over our homes, making too much noise? Seems that the answer is nothing. Is that correct?
By and large, aircraft have a right to come in and out of this public use airport, and there's very little we can do about it.
But to contradict that a little, there are size limitations at this airport. Taxiways are not wide enough to take, say, a 737.
Yeah, only aircraft that are appropriately sized for this airfield can come in here. So that's just a nature of limitations of the aircraft and the actual pavement of the airfield. So it's naturally self-selecting. Big gigantic aircraft can't physically come here. They can't land here.
Which brings up another point, that it isn't necessarily noise that's bugging people. It's something big going over your head. Yeah, it might not be in absolute terms making as much noise as perhaps the pickle. Yeah, but it sure is disturbing when you've got a Global Express. I don't know if you get any of those in anymore, but if you have one of those coming in over your head, just what the hell, what's
First
that?
time I saw a big one, I mean, I don't know what it was, but I thought it was a 737, it was so huge.
It's almost 8 p.m. I want to respect your time and time online. Staff's going to stay here a little longer, but I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for the feedback. This isn't the end of this journey. We're going to take away your notes and feedback, both online comments in the chat. Feedback you have, either email or otherwise. We're going to discuss that with the board of directors at the next board meeting. That'll feed into our strategic planning conversations with the board of directors and see how we want to implement changes or a different methodology of engaging both our aircraft community and our local community around this topic of noise and impact in the community. So this is not the end of the journey. As we go through that process for the next several months, I imagine we're going to have another meeting like this to give you a report back about what decisions have been made and how that might impact or not impact your particular perspective or interest in this area. So we'll try to close that loop with you and continue moving down this road of open and honest communications with you about what we do here at the airport. But thank you all for being here tonight. Yeah, we'll build that into the, we'll be publishing the recorded Zoom meeting.